Okay, it's 6:33, and I think we'll get the presentation started. I want to thank you for joining tonight's virtual presentation of the Upper Mississippi River International Port District's Port Master Plan. This is a presentation of the final product of the study. It talks about where we've been, where we are, and where things go from here. Um, for those who have been following the study, you'll see a number of slides that you've probably seen before, where we tried to present some additional information that focuses on bringing everybody up to speed as far as what the board has done and what it means for the next steps in the larger study process. So we will start with a consultant presentation. I'll try and run through it fairly quickly, 25 minutes or so. Then there'll be an open discussion with with all the participants on the phone. We want to hear from everybody who wants to offer a comment. We'll try to respond as best we can. You have the consultant team on the phone. You have members of the staff who've been working with the Upper Mississippi River International Port District on the line. This is not a public board meeting. It's not a hearing, so it's not a formal legal meeting in the sense of any kind of official action. This is purely an information meeting to share with the public what we have found and where things are going with respect to next steps. So we'll take the discussion as long as it takes, probably finish, I guess, by 7:30 or 7:45. I have the call open until 7:45 in case it's needed. So this is the third and final public event for the UMRIPD's Port Master Plan. I want to emphasize that the master plan is about creating an organizational roadmap and an action plan for the UMRIPD Board of Commissioners. It's not a decision to build anything. It's not a commitment to build anything. It's not a pledge to build anything. It's an organizational roadmap for actions and next steps that the Port Board can take as it executes its mission and advances its purpose. Before anything that's mentioned in this plan gets built, there's going to be a lot of public process and legal process involved. There's going to be studies, permit investigations, many opportunities for public input and comment as given according to law. So you'll see some pictures of port diagrams. That does not mean that a port is imminent or a port has been approved. It is just a part of the organizational roadmap. The presentation portion of this meeting is being recorded on Zoom with the recording function, and we'll make it available along with the slide deck and the final port master plan document sometime around or a little after April 1st. That'll be at the Savannah Industrial Park's website, www.savannahindustrialpark.org/notices. So you'll be able to get everything that is public information there. You don't need to scribble down notes. You don't need to screenshot everything as we go through, although you're welcome to, but you don't have to because it will all be available for you. I'd ask that folks stay on mute and hold your questions and comments, and then when we go to open discussion, open up the mic and everybody can speak then. Looking at the status of the work, this has been a long process. We started in 2023. We did initial analysis of markets and development opportunities. We've suspended work a couple of times with changes in the UMRIPD's board leadership and different changes in direction from the board. We resumed in autumn 2024 with energy under the leadership of Steve Kiefer, and the Port Master Plan technical work was completed in December 2025. We have extended the outreach and review period to allow for additional public input and comment, and to make sure that your comments reached the board as part of their deliberation process. We have a technical advisory committee that we have met with 3 times, first in 2023 to kick off the study, then in March 2025 and February 2026 to present and vet and discuss the technical findings in advance of presenting them to the board. We also had public meetings in April of 2025 and February 5th, 2026, most recently, to share the draft final port master plan. Again, a lot of what you'll see tonight is from that meeting with some modifications and adjustments that put it in the context of what the board has seen. There was a presentation made to the board, an open meeting on March 5th, 2026, and this final presentation tonight. So the consultant work on this project has concluded as of this point, and the Board of Commissioners has adopted the master plan. Next steps are that the board will act as it determines and as it deems suitable to advance the master plan recommendations. Board actions are public. Many regulatory actions will also require public input. So any further action by the board with respect to anything in this master plan is going to be part of a public process. There are going to be continuing opportunities for public engagement. We invite you and welcome you to be part of that process as it continues. This is a lot of text, but I wanted to share it with you because this is exactly what was shared with the board when the discussion of whether to approve the master plan was on the agenda. So by way of preamble, in 2023, the Illinois Department of Transportation provided funding for UMRIPD to develop its first port master plan. Plan has been completed with input from a technical committee and 2 open public meetings. The plan represents an organizational roadmap and framework for UMRIPD, represents a number of initiatives for regional collaboration, property acquisition, investigation of property development options, including a potential barge terminal. But a master plan is not an affirmative development plan. It doesn't create the conditions for anything to be built. It identifies hurdles that must be overcome to move forward. It doesn't commit to any development project, decision, investment, or other action. Any specific actions, including any new port development, will be subject to additional investigations, permits, public review as required by law. What was before the board at this point was the opportunity to approve a general framework for how UMRIPD can advance to the next stages of its activities and investigations, including addressing issues raised by the public and by regulatory agencies in response to the draft master plan. So with those considerations in mind, the consultant team asked that the board consider moving for adoption this first ever UMRIPD Port Master Plan with the explicit acknowledgement that the board's not approving or committing to any actual port development at this time. So that motion was approved, and the board is now positioned to act as it determines to implement the recommendations. But again, I want to emphasize that the board's action did not vote to develop a port. It did not select a preferred alternative for a port. The question was on the table, was not on the table because the Port Master Plan doesn't actually recommend developing a port. It recommends further investigations, and it notes that there are significant challenges, engineering, navigation, environment, finance, community. All of those things need to be looked at to develop a port. And the real value of the plan is to lay out the steps to move forward. So there are a lot of port diagrams in the Port Master Plan, and why are those diagrams there? The plan has to offer potential development concepts to illustrate how something might be developed at the Savannah Industrial Park, so that we can test it, so that we can analyze what are the property impacts, what are the environmental effects, what are the traffic effects, what is the property needs, how does the operation work? All of those things, if you're going to analyze them, you actually need to have a concept of what you're going to build and how you operate it. You can't analyze a blank sheet of paper. So the Port Master Plan lays out some potential concepts that we thought were most feasible and least environmentally impacting, laid them out, drew them up so that we could evaluate them and present the results and the findings, both positive and negative, about those development concepts to the board and to the public for consideration. And that's what we did. And again, nothing in the board action means that a port is coming, imminent, or a done deal. We anticipate about 5 years of studies and further actions by the board would be needed before any development could occur. The other thing to mention about what the board action means is that it's separate from and unrelated to the Parcel 20 reuse process. The Port Master Plan does not address any potential uses on Parcel 20. It doesn't have any recommendations for or about Parcel 20. So again, the Port Master Plan document, including appendices, is about 450 pages. The main document's a little easier to read. It's an executive summary of just 3 pages. The main body of the report's about 100 pages, but we've included all copies of the public meeting slides and the bathymetry research that we've done, the muscle studies that we've done. So that's all part of the public record and will be available for review on the website. So I'd like to present next basically the material that was shared with the board so that you can see exactly how that process and discussion went, and then we'll close with some kind of additional thoughts. But to start with, Illinois has 20 port districts. They're established by the legislature, independent of each other, with their own sets of powers and their own missions. The enabling legislation is similar across different ports in many respects, but it also has some interesting differences, very specific to geography or to function, because it covers 5 different waterways and a lot of and geography that's all over the state. Each of these port districts has a different mix of assets and opportunities. Some port districts have marine terminals, some have marinas, some have none of those, but they do have airports. Some just have railroads and buildings. Some don't have any assets at all. These transportation facilities may exist in the district, but they're not part of the port district's ownership or jurisdiction. They're private. They exist privately. So Upper Mississippi River International Port District was established in 2009. It's the 17th out of the 20 port districts. So it's relatively new in the scheme of things. It's comprised of the entirety of Joe Daviess and Carroll counties. So it's kind of one of the larger port districts. The smallest one is our Havana Regional Port District, which is just Havana Township, and Rock Island Regional Port District, which is just the municipal limits of Rock Island and Waukegan. Same. It's governed by a board of commissioners, and it's established with specific missions and duties that are important to understand. It has the duty, the charge, to develop intermodal harbor and port facilities for use of public water and land transportation, has the duty to foster, stimulate, and promote the shipment of cargo through ports, has the duty to acquire, construct, own, lease, and develop terminals, harbors, wharf facilities, piers, docks, warehouses, bulk terminals, grain terminals, boats, harborcraft, and related facilities, including rail, has the duty to adopt and plan for its jurisdiction, which it has done with this Port Master Plan. It has the duty to study and make recommendations about river resources. Then the powers it's given to execute that mission are it can issue water construction permits, it can acquire, own, construct, lease, sell, operate facilities, it can provide utility services, it can apply for grants and loans, it can borrow money, it can issue revenue bonds, and it has other financial powers. And an important and unique feature to the enabling legislation for UMRIPD is that it specifically highlighted the power to do this, to execute its powers at any former military base within UMRIPD's jurisdictional boundaries. So the legislature clearly pointed at the Savannah Industrial Park as the location for these duties to be executed. So today, what kind of resources does UMRIPD have to go with these duties and powers? It has 2 small properties that it owns, both at the Savannah Industrial Park, and it has a $7 million grant for land acquisition, remediation, utilities, and land preparedness, basically, from the Rebuild Illinois program through a grant administered by the Illinois Department of Transportation several years ago. So here are the current assets: 2 small properties at the Savannah Industrial Park, one on Crim Drive, one on McIntyre Road. No shoreline is owned by UMRIPD at this point, and no marine facilities, no cargo terminals owned at this point. In the future, that parcel ownership could be expanded drastically using the Illinois DOT grant money. The Port Master Plan envisions the potential acquisition of over 300 acres of Savannah Industrial Park property by UMRIPD. All of the property that is shown in blue is the potential acquisition areas. So it's parcel 1, parcels 3 through 3C, parcels 4 through 18, and some additional parcels just to the east of parcels 4 through 18 that are under study now. So this is a separate process from the Port Master Plan. It's being executed under agreement and through a process established by Illinois Department of Transportation. But the important thing is that UMRIPD is looking to acquire property and only property that is currently owned by the Joe Carroll Depot Local Reuse Authority that has been conveyed to it with environmental clearances and assurances by original owners. And it is going to be straight purchase by UMRIPD of Joe Carroll Depot LRA property. No private property acquisitions are envisioned here. No transactions with the Army, no transactions with other public agencies. Straight UMRIPD to Joe Carroll Depot LRA relationship. There's a series of recommendations in the master plan, and the document, the presentation that we gave in February goes into this in more detail, and the document goes into it at length. But just to highlight the core recommendations of the Port Master Plan, a lot of the recommendations are near term, happening in the 0 to 2 year time frame. Some of them are phased, where there's an initial phase and then a subsequent phase. But these are all actions that you can look to accomplish and see the port board accomplish prior to any kind of port facility or marine terminal development. The first is to establish public agency and private sector partnerships to advance UMRIPD's core mission. Their core mission is the welfare and the health and the utilization of the water system for transportation. And public sector agencies up and down the waterfront are a big part of that. Federal agencies as property owners and regulators are a big part of that. Private marine terminals that are currently operating in the port district are a big part of that. Marinas are a big part of that. So all of this points to an opportunity for UMRIPD to be more of an active partner in coordinating in a more structured way the marine interests and activities of public and private agency partners within its district as a whole, all pointed to executing its mission. The second opportunity is to partner and collaborate with the city of Savannah and the Savannah Park District related to the Savannah Marina and the adjoining property. This is kind of a special case of partnership that has a particular focus, which is the opportunity for reuse, redevelopment, and improvement of the Savannah city waterfront, the downtown area, linking it to tourism, to recreational uses, to other kinds of downtown-friendly uses. The third recommendation is to establish active barge fleeting adjacent to the Savannah Industrial Park. When we look at introducing marine uses and marine cargo uses at the Savannah Industrial Park, there are different levels of intensity, and the least intense use is to simply fleet barges at the adjacent to the facility. It doesn't require any upland development. It doesn't require any cargo transfer. It doesn't generate any traffic. It's simply a use of the water for parking and staging barges. So the recommendation in the Port Master Plan, which has actually been implemented, was to advance a pre-application for permitting of a fleeting location at the northern and western corner of Apple River Island, submitted to the Corps of Engineers as a way to generate formal feedback, review, and consideration of the concept. That application was supported by bathymetry studies, which showed that there's adequate water depths for berthing barges, tying them off, and it was supported also by a mussel study that found no impacts from mussel activity in that particular location. So from a use it is also a location that's outside the main channel that's unlikely, we believe, to impact navigation. All of that material is before the Corps, and we are looking forward to their determination and their identification of any additional next steps that need to be undertaken to advance it. If it does advance, it would be we would look to construct the mooring facilities. Basically, 4 mooring piles is all that would need to be constructed in a 2 to 5 year time frame. The fourth recommendation is to look to generate revenues from UMRIPD's properties that it currently owns at the Savannah Industrial Park through subleasing, through modest improvements, but basically turn that property into a cash flow as a landlord. And then proceed with the acquisition of the additional strategic properties. Again, that 300 to 350 acres. Um, there would be an acquisition phase in the 0 to 2 year time frame, and then revenue generation, looking to really sublease it out, improve it for leaseholds, get it in the hands of revenue paying users and tenants as a means to convert the capital asset into a revenue generating asset. The next recommendation is to establish a utility district at the Savannah Industrial Park and develop gas infrastructure. UMRIPD has been working with the Joe Carroll Depot LRA on renewable and clean energy production initiatives, looking at the potential for biofuels, biodiesel, and other clean fuel generation at the site. Not only as a matter of good public policy, but also because there are a number of industrial users and tenants that could be attracted if gas was available. It's not currently available at the Savannah Industrial Park, but if it was available, it would open up the possibility to attract additional kinds of industrial users. So there is and a good way to do that is within the context of UMRIPD taking on the duties of a utility district. As a utility district, UMRIPD would have better powers and resources to maintain roads, to maintain sewers, to maintain water. Those are currently responsibilities of the Joe Carroll LRA, but UMRIPD, with additional powers and with the potential for revenue streams, would be in a better position to ensure that that infrastructure is maintained and improved as needed to support future use and growth at the Savannah Industrial Park. With the idea and the goal of generating sustainable revenue streams out through a 5 year period, there'd be an opportunity to basically professionalize UMRIPD's staff. A number of port districts in Illinois do not have permanent staff. They operate through intergovernmental agreements, staff loans, cross use of existing municipal and quasi governmental employees. And that's the way UMRIPD operates today. Um, to do some of the things that are really hard to do, like develop port infrastructure, it really calls for permanent staff, permanent professional staff who can devote the time, the energy to the permitting, to running the engineering studies, running the environmental studies, all the things that need to happen. That would be a next step then, is to convert revenue streams into professional staffing and move forward. We'd hope to ideally, you'd have anywhere from 500,000 to $1 million in revenue streams for a full function staff, but it could be done with 250,000 a year probably to cover an executive director and a finance director, and that would be sufficient. Uh, the next recommendation, and this is a big one, is to advance the engineering, environmental, and financial studies for a conveyor and pipeline port at the Savannah Industrial Park, utilizing property to be acquired from the Joe Carroll Depot LRA. This would start with looking at the potential for planning grants to conduct the necessary studies that would have to happen. There'd be initial planning and permit investigations, including environmental and engineering work. There'd be an examination of and outreach to potential private partners to ensure that whatever got developed would have a private market and a public-private partnership investment opportunity. From that, you look to advance to final studies, final permitting in a 2 to 5 year time frame, and then seek construction grants for the much larger costs of actual construction versus grants. Finally, look to construct and operate in a 5 to 10 year time frame. So really, 0 to 2 years near-term planning and initial funding, midterm final planning, final permitting, final funding, construction 5 years plus is the time frame that would be looked at for a port development at the Savannah Industrial Park. There were a couple of concepts that we developed, and again, we developed these so that we could test them. This particular concept features 2 fleeting areas. One at the northwest end of Apple River Island. This is the one that we have submitted a pre-application for. A second one, which may or may not be used, but we have included it, may or may not be required, is on the backside of Apple River Island, and it's a mirror image of the one that would be on the front side. One could be used for loads, one could be used for empties. If the terminal had generated a lot of barge activity. If it didn't, you'd probably only need the one fleeting area. Um, the other feature here that's important is the location of the berthing. This is a 1,000-foot loading and unloading dock for two barges, and it's located on the outside of Apple River Island. We've done that to try and avoid being inside Brickhouse Slough. The water there is shallow. If there's recreational activity in there, there's a wing dam, so there's navigational impediments. There's a number of reasons why the outside of Apple River Island is environmentally, it poses less challenges from those standpoints. We believe that the dock can be located outside of the channel boundary, so it would not be an impediment to navigation. The channel here is fairly wide, and we tuck just inside the designated channel. We have looked at this site with bathymetry studies, and the depth is very good here. We think that there's very little channel deepening that would be needed, but it does have other issues that I'm going to talk about. This particular facility, though, if the berthing is on the outside of Apple River Island, because it's not adjacent to the Savannah Industrial Park, which is where all of the cargo storage activities would be located, we would have to be conveying cargo from the dock to land. So it would be limited to cargo that can be conveyed, grains, fertilizers, possibly liquid natural gas. We couldn't use a crane to lift lumber or containers or machine parts or steel or pulp or any kind of anything that would require a crane, and it would have to go right from the ship onto ground. We're not set up to handle that. We would need to be berthing directly next to the Savannah Industrial Park in Brickhouse Slough to accomplish that. So by choosing a location outside of Apple River Island, we have limited our choice of our choice of cargoes deliberately. A number of the properties at the Savannah Industrial Park we've identified for LNG operations, for grain terminal functions, for fertilizer terminal functions, for open storage, for general administrative and technical and operating support. We've also identified an area, a substantial area of over 100 acres, that we think could be used for potentially the attraction of a soybean crushing or similar agricultural processing facility. With the addition of water, with the provision and availability of natural gas, and with the assets that the Savannah Industrial Park already has, which is rail service by a Riverport Rail connecting to BNSF, good highway access, plenty of land availability. All of those things could be a very attractive package for soy crush. We've also looked at the market layout and the geography of other soy crush facilities in Iowa and Illinois and in Wisconsin, and we think that this is basically a hole in the market where this facility would have a lot of advantages compared to all the other existing facilities. So it has the potential for success. The second concept is real similar, except that it moves the berthing for the barges further south. This becomes inside the channel boundary. However, it would encroach on the channel. It would require channel relocation. The channel is fairly narrow at this point, and if you see these little blue lines here, those are wing dams and marine structures that basically function to push the channel up closer to Apple River Island. You'd have to push it back away from Apple River Island towards the Iowa side. It would probably involve a lot of structural activity to make this work in the water. So it has the advantage of a shorter pipeline and conveyor distance, but it has greater navigational impacts, which is a challenge. In terms of cargo handling, both of the concepts we think capture what we see as the sweet spot of market demand. We have a port that is highly successful up in East Dubuque called Logistics Park Dubuque. That handles cargo from Joe Davies County, from northeastern Iowa, from southwestern Wisconsin. But really, cargo wants to be within 25 to 50 miles of the river in order to use the river. If you're a longer distance away, that cargo goes somewhere else. It goes to rail, it goes to truck, it goes to other kinds of facilities, and it never gets traded on the river. So if you're going to be competitive for cargo in southern Joe Davies, in Carroll County, northern Whiteside County, a facility at the Savannah Industrial Park is a perfect location for it. And that's why we think that both alternatives would support up to about 1 million tons of grain per year, and an equivalent amount of fertilizer, up to one barge tow per week in the best case scenario. The actual case scenario would need to be determined based on further customer research and commitments, but that's what this plan allows for. The idea is that UMRIPD would develop the port facility, make it shovel ready, and then private developers would provide the buildings, storage facilities, cargo handling equipment apart from the conveyor system necessary to make it work. No capacity for lift on, lift off, roll on, roll off cargo. Um, Fleeting in these plans is outside the channel boundaries and doesn't impact any river control structures. Option one does not impact the channel. Option two does impact the channel and navigation control structures. But both of these options have the advantage that we think little or no dredging is going to be required, except to get access to the fleeting area at the backside of Brickhouse Slough. An environmental side, the fleeting requires 8 in-water piles. It's few to no mussel impacts in either location. Option one, however, is in an established mussel colony, and we've again attached the reports to the port master plan. Option two, barge dock location, is actually in the main channel, so we didn't survey it for mussels because it's technically already designated for marine operations. There would additionally, in both options, be structural footings on Apple River Island, and one in Brickhouse Slough itself to support the overhead conveyor and pipeline system. It would require overhead easements through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service owned and managed lands in the National Wildlife Refuge. On the private property side, we don't think that there will be any private property impacts. The conveyor system, when it gets to land, is planned to run in the right of way of CN Road, which is Joe Carroll Depot LRA Road. We're not looking at the requirement of private property or the acquisition of private property for any port activity, any storage facilities, any terminal facilities, any pass-through conveyance. Looking at implementation, we are not recommending and have not recommended option number two, primarily because of the channel conflict, which we see as a very significant issue that would take a lot of time and effort to resolve, and would pose a lot of challenges to existing river traffic. Option one, we think, does not pose that same kind of navigation challenge, although that's a determination that we'll have to get from the Corps of Engineers and other regulatory agencies. But it will definitely require addressing the mussels that were identified on site, along with National Wildlife Refuge use, navigation, hydrology, all those things to be looked at through additional studies. Permitting, cost, funding, public benefits are other key implementation items, which I'll talk about in a minute. I do want to talk about a variation that we examined, and this was for to fill out our what if analysis. And the question was, what if option one isn't feasible for mussels for other purposes? Was there another place we could technically do the kind of port development we've envisioned? And the answer is yes. Theoretically, it is possible to do barge operations in Brickhouse Slough, and it has some advantages to operating in Brickhouse Slough, but it creates other effects which are negative. So a possible variation, we keep all the upland features of option one, but move the barge dock inside Brickhouse Slough below the closing dam. It would require dredging between two deep areas of Brickhouse Slough, but not a lot of dredging, actually. It turns out to be fairly modest, but still much more significant than in the other options. It would require locating a barge dock below the closing dam and then conveyor up to land. This area has had a prior mussel study, but that mussel study is dated and needs to be updated. And you are traversing directly up from the barge through fish and wildlife lands. On the bright side, you are not conveying over Apple River Island. You are not putting structure in Brickhouse Slough. You're not impacting any structures in the river. So to permit this, we've looked at 14 different investigations being needed just on the water side. Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife, Illinois EPA, Department of Natural Resources, Environmental Management Agency, between 18 and 33 months. For the landside facilities, about 13 additional investigations, approvals, and permits. Corps, Fish and Wildlife, the Illinois agencies, plus the counties, 12 to 24 months, which could be concurrent, and access improvements will be needed. The road capacity is generally adequate on the Savannah Industrial Park, but the condition in some cases is poor. We'll need repaving and restriping of McIntyre roads, spot improvements, including pavement geometry shoulders at other locations, probably including Army Depot Road. Grain, fertilizer, energy users, they're all expected to be not rail users. They're expected to be truck users only, but the option for rail would exist if they worked on an arrangement with the private railroad. The future soy crush could be a significant rail user, but absent a specific rail use and rail user, we have not made any recommendations or accommodations or plans about private rail operations within the Savannah Industrial Park. Capital costs for the concept that we looked at, option one, they're high. $138 million. That estimate includes 30% for contingency, 20% for soft costs, including engineering, design, permitting, management. More than 70% of that cost is for the conveyor system and the support structures to span that distance over Apple River Island Brickhouse Slough to keep the barges out of Brickhouse Slough. Reducing the conveyor length, number of support structures would significantly reduce the cost. That and other value engineering options would be ripe for exploration and future studies. We looked at the revenue potential to UMRIPD from developing this kind of facility based on benchmarks from other ports. We think that revenue expectations of $1 million a year prior to port operation, just from leasing, could potentially be achieved in a best case scenario. From port development of a grain and fertilizer operation, revenues of about 2.7 million per year. And then if you were able to lease the rest of the property for soy crushing, up over 4 million a year. So pretty decently healthy annual revenues, especially compared to the 250 to 500,000 we were thinking about just to staff UMRIPD. The additional could go to maintenance, could go to capital expansion, it could go to supporting the issuance of bonds. And you could issue revenue bonds against this kind of revenue potential, but it would fall far short of the 138 million you need to develop. You'd really need to look at reducing the cost of port development and identifying supplemental revenue, both of those things in combination to bring the financing picture into a more feasible situation. We can always hope that Illinois DOT will be able to issue more grants as they have in the past. We can't count on it, but we are hopeful that IDOT and its partners will be able to find a way to continue their great historic support for Illinois ports. Federal grants are certainly possible. The Marquee Energy Soy Crush grant facility in Hennepin received a $39 million grant for a barge loadout facility for soy crush product. We performed basically a preliminary benefit cost analysis to see what kind of grant size might be justified by UMRIPD's option one concept, and we came up with a very similar number. So we think that a $40 million grant is not out of the realm of possibility here. So that gets us part of the way there. Public-private partnerships would help get the rest of the way, but it's going to take a lot of further work on this topic specifically. A lot of construction benefits in terms of job creation from job activity. We think that with from an operations standpoint, we'd end up with about 100 to 150 total jobs in the state of Illinois, direct, indirect, and induced from the port operation. Another 150 possible from soy crush. That's not all on terminal jobs. That's not all longshore jobs or port transfer activity, but that's the whole spectrum of port activity, including trucking, warehouse distribution, logistics, administrative, supply, maintenance, all the functions that go into the port ecosystem. We also think that having barge service at the Savannah Industrial Park and all the other improvements that come with it would make the facility overall more attractive for additional businesses, help it attract new business and growth on both public and private property to the benefit of all those current property owners. We heard from the public at our second meeting a lot of really good questions, all of which we believe require and warrant further study, and we presented them to the board as saying we think that this is what we heard, and we recommend that these all be examined. Making sure that there's a clear line of demarcation with the Parcel 20 plan. Why do we need another port location? Couldn't you just expand Logistics Park Dubuque and Viserion Grain in downtown Savannah? I've talked about the reasons why. It's partly it's the market distance for Logistics Park Dubuque, and partly it's the constraints and the nature and the capacity of Savannah's downtown and increasingly pedestrian and recreational oriented waterfront. Can you and convey over a navigable waterway? Is it possible to fully protect the conveyor system? We would look in option one to convey right over the closing dam where it would be restricted navigation. And it would the reason the conveyor system is so expensive is because we're looking to fully protect it as much as technology allows. Who maintains the system? We look at that as a private lease responsibility. We use Brickhouse Slough for fishing and boating. Can you avoid any use there, even fleeting? The answer is possibly. That will require further study, but we were aware of that, and that's why we tried to berth outside of Brickhouse Slough in option one, and that's why that was framed as the leading alternative. Are you sure about LNG, given that it's a challenging commodity to move and transport? We're not sure about it. We have accommodated it. We have planned for it, but that'll take further discussions with the LNG provider and user community to ensure that it can be handled, appropriately and that it's actually meeting a market demand. Won't this be environmentally disruptive? We have tried very hard to make it the least environmentally invasive design that we can, and that's part of the reason why the locations of the berths are so far out from the land, and why we're using a conveyor system is to minimize those environmental impacts. Aren't these economic benefits really transfer payments? That was a great question. To the extent that it's new traffic that would not otherwise exist on the water, it's new business. To the extent it's relocating business from other facilities, it is a transfer. The goal is to attract new business and to generate new net benefits for the facility. Our final recommendations are for UMRIPD to maintain awareness on possible Parcel 20 and Savannah Industrial Park development in the short, medium, and long-term horizons, and to look at opportunities for federal land banking and federal land exchange, using some of its current $7 million land allocation to identify and acquire lands that may be of interest to federal agencies. It could potentially be exchanged for other lands that are necessary and helpful to port development in the long term. With that, I'm going to conclude the formal presentation. If anyone has joined late, the recorded version of this presentation, if you didn't hear at the beginning, the slide deck, the Port Master Plan document, is going to be made available sometime after April 1st at www.savannahindustриalpark.org/notices. At this point, I'm gonna pause the presentation and ask folks, raise your hand, let me call on you, take turns and be brief so everyone who wants to speak can, and ask or say anything you want, and we will respond if we can.